What is up, clean freaks and filthy friends alike? Filthy Dan coming at you for another film discussion, and today we're going to be taking a look at the top 10 horror movies that shaped my childhood. Now, I gotta say, I don't know that this list has been done before. If it has, I would like to give credit to whoever did do a list like this at one point. But I felt that, having been a horror fan for most of my life, it's only proper that I do make something like this. The films in this list, there's not really any particular method to the ranking, except that from 10 down to 1, that it's really more so just the impact that they had on me as a horror fan. So the closer we get to 1, I gotta say probably the greater the impact was, the more I would watch it as a kid. All those nuts and bolts are included as this list goes along. But let's take a look again at the top 10 horror films that shaped my childhood. Coming in at number 10 is going to be the 2004 Dawn of the Dead, directed by Zack Snyder. Now, this was honestly, I think, the first zombie movie that really had an impact. I mean, of course, I had seen House of the Dead and Resident Evil before this, but those didn't really have as much of an impact as Dawn of the Dead did. This was really the first time that I was mortified by zombies, as it were. And I would go on to find out that there were, of course, the George Romero zombie films alongside this. I mean, Land of the Dead came out about a year after this. But this was really my serious introduction to serious, don't fuck with these kind of zombie movies. And this one I saw around the time it came out, and I remember, again, just being absolutely terrified by the indications of a zombie apocalypse in this film. And, of course, some of the very realistic found footage type special features didn't really help matters. They really packaged the DVD pretty well for this one, and it was just a really intense film. It's one of the earlier incarnations of the really fast, really aggressive zombies that some people seem to have a problem with. I don't mind zombies either way, but I think that the fast zombies that we get in Dawn of the Dead here are absolutely terrifying and are not a force to be fucked with. So Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, I was like 9 when I saw it, so it had an impact. Now, number 9, this one is where the list does get a little tricky, because this is one I did see at a very earlier age. This was 1998's Bride of Chucky, directed by Ronnie Yu. Now, I did see this one whenever it came out on VHS to rent. I remember my parents rented the whole series, but this one, having been the newer one, it was a little flashier. This one did absolutely terrify the fuck out of me, as did all the other Child's Play films that they rented. But I think that a lot of the visuals from Bride of Chucky were really some of the ones that stuck the strongest. Now, I know I should probably put it higher, as it is one of the first horror films that I do remember seeing, but it was one that I saw as a kid and didn't really properly revisit until I was about 12 or 13, so there was quite a significant gap of time separating my initial watch to my revisiting watch later on. But I do remember being absolutely terrified whenever he rips the piercing out of Alexis Arquette's face. I mean, that was, man, I can't even tell you just how freaked out I was by that, and takes the pillow and sits on his face, smothers him. It was fucking vicious, man. And of course the kill with all the nails where they stick them in John Ritter's face and they have to stab him later. That was... There's so much imagery from this film that haunted me as a kid, but of course I would go back to it and love it, and I gotta show nothing but love and appreciation to Bride of Chucky for being one of those first horror films that really got me headed in that proper direction. Coming in number 8 is 1987's The Lost Boys, directed by Joel Schumacher. Now, this was really, I gotta say, probably the first vampire film proper that I ever saw. I was probably about 7 or 8 whenever I saw this one, and I remember having tried to watch Dracula and Blade. Blade was, I think, a little too complex for me to really get as a kid. And of course, Dracula was just a little too slow for me at the time. And I gotta say that The Lost Boys probably hit that proper level of it's got enough horror, it's got enough of the vampire mythology. There's like just enough of everything to really encapsulate my young imagination at the time. So I gotta say that The Lost Boys, I think, really set itself apart. And I mean, still today, after coming around to vampire films, it really does still stand on its own as being pretty self-aware. A lot of that self-aware humor I didn't really catch as a kid, but revisiting it as an adult, it's still an absolute blast. It's the same amount of fun every time I go back and rewatch it. I honestly can't find a whole lot wrong with this movie, so there's just so much fun to be had. And again, having seen it so young, it's one that always stuck with me. It's probably one of the reasons why I choose to grow my hair out as an adult. So it had some sort of an influence, right? So Joel Schumacher's Lost Boys, number 8. Coming in number 7 is going to be Final Destination, directed by James Wong. This is another one I saw not too long after it came out. I think the second one was probably just getting ready to come out around the time I saw this one. And it was just one of those movies that happened to be there at the house one day. Of course, as a kid, you have no concept of your parents can go to the store and buy shit when you're not home. So I remember coming home from school one day and this movie's there, and I wasn't really aware that it was a horror movie. Of course, looking at the box art, it's fucking clear as day. But I had already acquired a certain set of expectations what a horror movie ought to be. And I know that my brother really liked this one. So I remember he was watching it, and that's when I really sat down and watched it. And this one was creepy for its originality. You've got, of course, people who are dying, not by some murderer who's running around with a knife cutting them apart, but death as a sort of supernatural force, some sort of otherworldly being coming around, finishing his job. This movie, I think, really made an impact on me to some degree. It's one reason why I am very careful walking around my own house anymore. But there's definitely a lot of fun to be had with this one. I know I watched this one a lot, and that's really the main reason why it goes on this, is just how often I did watch it as a kid. The impact is definitely evident when you consider how cautious I tend to be. So, Final Destination, easily at number 7. Now, coming in at number 6 is going to be Night of the Demons. Now, you guys know that I love Night of the Demons, so naturally this one has to go on there. This is another one. I was about 8 years old when I saw it over at a neighbor's house one night. And it was one that, after I watched it, I was like, hey, can I borrow this? And I borrowed it for like 4 fucking weeks, you know? And watched the fuck out of this movie. And it's one that I only recently acquired to my collection. And I don't know why the fuck it took me that long. But it's one that surprisingly follows the slasher formula. I didn't realize until I was a little older that, oh my god, that's probably why I like it. It's a slasher, but it's also a demonic possession movie at the same time, so it kind of mixes those two, and I think it does it perfectly well. There's a lot of fun to be had here. This is my introduction to Linnea Quigley, and honestly, I cannot ever look at her without seeing the old lipstick trick. I mean, that's something that as an 8-year-old is going to really leave a mark in your mind. It's like, I know there was a short time where I didn't know the name of this movie, so I think I referred to it as the one where the girl puts the lipstick in her boob. And yeah, this one just really has always stood out as one of my favorites, and it's, even before I ever had a chance to really go back to it as a teenager, it was one that I still would have held as a very influential, very favorite horror movie. And I think in the grand scheme of horror movies, it definitely does rest pretty high on that sort of ranking chart. So, Night of the Demons, number 6. Now, number 5, you all saw this one coming. This is going to be 1996's Scream by Wes Craven. What kid who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s did not like Scream? I know that there was probably a few of them, but as a kid coming up in the 90s and early 2000s, this was kind of one of those movies that there was no escaping, because Ghostface as a costume was everywhere. You couldn't turn one direction without seeing the ghost mask somewhere, or a VHS copy, or the trilogy collection box set somewhere. Like, Scream was fucking everywhere, and I remember watching it. It was on one of those pre-recorded VHS tapes also, and this one had Babe, Beverly Hills Ninja, and Scream. So it was a really interesting combination, and I remember just kind of going through there. It's like, oh, Babe is fun. Beverly Hills Ninja, oh, absolutely fucking hilarious. And then Scream, it's like, oh my god, what is this? And when I saw it, I'm like, oh my god, this is the movie that has got that mask, you know? And that opening scene with Drew Barrymore really freaked me out. Like, I don't think at the time I was consciously aware of who Drew Barrymore was, but I was, but I wasn't, you know? And her scene there in the opening, it absolutely floored me, because without really acknowledging her star power, I was still under the impression, okay, this is going to be our main character. Absolutely not. And I remember I was also disarmed by Matthew Lillard being in here, because this, I think, when I saw it, was around the same time Scooby-Doo came out. So I'm like, oh, Shaggy's in here. He can't be a bad guy. Wrong again. But yeah, Scream, it really is one that I know a lot of people don't like it, but I absolutely love it. It does a great job at deconstructing the horror genre, and it really voices a lot of what people had been saying for probably about a decade at that point when it comes to slasher films specifically. I mean, there's just so much fun to be had with Scream. So Scream number 5. Sorry, Frank. Coming in number 4 is 13 Ghosts from 2001. Now, this is another one that I remember was just kind of there whenever I came home one day from school, and I think, if I remember correctly, my mom was watching it with one of the neighbors, and I came in probably near the end of the second act, and I remember just being a little shook up by the visual imagery of the ghosts in this film. And at the time I saw this, I was still under the impression that ghosts were mostly just little floating white sheets with black holes for the eyes. So to see that these were really gruesome depictions of ghosts that were shaped just like normal people, it really shook me up a little bit. And again, this is another one that had Matthew Lillard, so fucking twofer on Matthew Lillard there. I remember feeling terrible seeing Shaggy get killed. This is one that would eventually become a favorite, because the visual sense of the ghosts was just something that really stood out as being different, unique, and just it stood itself apart from any ghost movie at that time, and just a lot of the horror movies that I was into at that time. And this one, again, it quickly became a favorite. I would find myself watching this movie every day after school. I would watch the movie front to back, and then I would go into the special features, and every day it was the same fucking thing there for a while. I would watch the little ghost files where they go into the backstories of the ghosts, and I would only make it to about the Angry Princess's ghost file, and I noticed that the sun was at a certain level. Like, it was getting close to dusk. I'm like, yep, nope, done with this one for the day. And I guess my kid logic was that I didn't want to have nightmares by watching that. But of course I would still go and watch like Halloween 6 or something later that night. It's like, all these slashers I'll watch, but I'll be goddamned if I watch the special features of 13 Ghosts After Dark. So that's my fun little 13 Ghosts story there. But 13 Ghosts easily hits number 4. It's still one of my favorites. Now, coming in at number 3, this one is sort of a cheat. Now, this one is not just one, but 2 movies. This is going to be A Nightmare on Elm Street and A Nightmare on Elm Street 2. In part because I couldn't really decide which one I wanted to go with. The first one is a classic. The second one is an underappreciated gem. Now, I remember my parents owned both of these on a dual set VHS. Like, it was a little 2-pack with 1 and 2 in it. And these are films that I found just under the TV stand one day, and we lived off of we were living on a street called Elm Court, and I remember I was absolutely fucking mortified by that, and I watched it. I would watch both of these back to back, and I can't remember which one I watched more. I might have gone to Nightmare on Elm Street 2 just a little more than the first one, just because it showed Freddy more, and Freddy, I think, was a little bit scarier in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I mean, when he's shooting out of Jesse's chest, that's absolutely fucking terrifying. And Freddy coming into the real world, that was... I didn't understand that was breaking the rules set by the first film. I was just watching a fucking fun horror movie. And I can see now how, yeah, it does go against the rules set up in the first one, but it never bothered me, and it still doesn't. I like that it kind of went and did its own thing. And of course, the first one is absolutely iconic. I mean, it does that Janet Leigh deal where you think Tina's going to be our main character, and she fucking is not. So it does a nice job at playing with your expectations there, and it was really... Again, it was another one of those ones that I had not seen anything like it at that point. And, of course, I had been familiar with Michael Myers, Chucky, and Norman Bates at this point. But Freddy Krueger, man, he fucking hit me in a certain nerve that just... It's restless now. But the first two Nightmares, like... As far as which one was more influential as a horror fan, I really can't fucking decide, so that's why they're both here. I mean, Nightmare 1 was... It was something that I never forgot and never will forget. And Nightmare on Elm Street 2, that one was just always fun to go back to. And it had a little bit of a love story. I didn't see any of the in-your-face undertones that are in that film when I was a kid. So none of that was ever really aware until much later. But yeah, the first two Nightmares, man, I couldn't pick. Now, coming in at number 2, this is one of the 3 horror films that was on that first VHS tape with the 3 pre-recordeds. Now, everyone, if you've been following my channel for a while, you know this story. There was the VHS tape with Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, Psycho 3, and In the Mouth of Madness. Psycho 3 was the second one on that VHS, and it was an interesting watch. It was the first Psycho that I ever watched, so whenever I did go back to watch the first one, that was after I'd seen 2 and 4 also, so I knew exactly how the first film was supposed to play out for the most part. But Psycho 3 really stood out as being different. I liked... Because, I had already been familiar with Michael at this point. This one had Norman Bates. That was just something that I was not expecting. I mean, you see the shadow of a woman, and it's like, oh my god, it's that Norman guy. So it absolutely terrified me, and I remember really liking that there was the knife that very much reminded me of the Halloween 6, and... yeah, the impact that Psycho 3 had, man. I remember watching Mrs. Doubtfire and being absolutely terrified by that at one point, because it's like, oh my god, this guy looks like the dude from Psycho 3. This is absolutely fucking terrifying. But, yeah, Psycho 3, man, it's not really my favorite of the Psycho films, but that's almost a perfect fucking series right there, though, but... Psycho 3, I have nothing but mad love and respect for. It turned me on to Psycho and really further influenced me as a horror fan. And Dwayne Duke, watch the guitar, man. Come on, Psycho 3, number 2. Now, coming in at number 1 is the shocker of the century. That is going to be Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, because again, back to that VHS tape with the 3 horror movies on it. This is my first conscious memory of ever watching a horror film, was watching Halloween 6. I mean, you've got fucking George P. Wilbur as the fucking most terrifying Michael Myers up to that point. Just a very brutal Michael. You've got Paul Rudd in an early role. So with that, that's something I've always said is I've been a fucking Paul Rudd fan forever. Like, oh, when did you see him? 40-Year-Old Virgin? Nah, man, Halloween 6. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, really. But yeah, Halloween 6, man, that was, again, the first horror film that I remember consciously ever watching. And of course, that's why Michael is my favorite. Halloween is one of my favorite franchises to go to. I mean, out of the big 3, certainly Halloween is my favorite. That one really just kicked the door open for me as a horror fan, so I have, again, nothing but mad love and respect for Halloween 6. It's still one of my absolute favorites. If you saw my Halloween ranking, you know just how high that one sits. If you know my thoughts on that film anyway, you know that I will just fucking gush about this one all day. So you can definitely go check out the review I did on that. Check out the Halloween ranking. But yeah, Halloween 6, man, is absolutely the most influential film for me as a horror fan in terms of having shaped my childhood. I mean, being the catalyst for me becoming a horror fan. For nothing else, it deserves fucking #1 place. Plus, it's a really fun film, even if it doesn't make sense or really sit well together. Halloween 6 is the fucking man, dude. So that was the top 10 horror films that shaped my childhood. What I would like you guys to do is go ahead and leave comments down below. Let me know what were the top 10 horror films that shaped your childhood if you saw them at a young age. Or even, what are the 10 horror films that really shaped your taste as a horror fan, period? I would definitely love to know, get some conversation going on that, so definitely let me know down below. And as always, thank you all for watching this video. Please be sure to like and share. And if you haven't already, please stab that subscribe button. And if you're feeling filthy, again, just let me know what were the top 10 that really shaped you as a horror fan. And be sure to check out these social medias here. We've got the Facebook page, the Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, Patreon, and the Stream Demons fan page over on Facebook. Be sure to go check out some of those. And as always, stay filthy.